for those of you who haven't been on one of these live calls with me, I'll give a super quick introduction. My name is Sage Rountree. That is my real name. It's not just my yoga teacher name. My parents chose my name Sage out of the Burpee seed catalog because they wanted a flower name. And I got Rountree from my husband. It's spelled with no letter D because it is a corruption of rowan tree. Sage Rountree, I am coming to you from central North Carolina. I'm in the small town of Hillsborough, county seat of Orange County, one time the state capital, and just up the road from the University of North Carolina, where I went to graduate school. I have a PhD in English literature, and then moved out of academia into publishing, and then from publishing into endurance sports coaching, endurance sports racing of my own, and of course, yoga teaching. I co-owned a yoga studio for 15 years, and now I am virtual as the founder and director of Comfort Zone Yoga, which is my virtual studio focused on yoga teacher development, which is where we are right now, having one of these monthly Comfort Zone Conversations calls that I adore leading for y'all. If you've had a chance to look at the notebook, the workbook that I created for you, the link is in the chat. You'll see I really have a good time getting into this. My goal is to help you be confident and present in front of the classroom so that you can serve your students best. I view yoga teaching as an act of service, and I understand that the teachers I work with in particular, coming out of their 200-hour yoga teacher training, possibly moving into their 300-hour yoga teacher training, or just looking for continuing education and support, often have this kind of crisis of confidence or the sense of imposter syndrome. And I think the key to that is remembering that we as the teachers are simply the guides. We are not the heroes of the yoga classroom. And when we can center our students, when we can elevate their agency, remind them that they're the ones who get to make choices about their bodies, what they do with them, about their practice, then we can be those guides and act in service to our students and elevate them to the hero status. So thanks for answering in the chat, in the poll. Fantastic. So it looks like these are not statistically significant numbers. I recognize my husband, who's working downstairs, is a statistician. So he would say, this is not a scientific poll. But two of us said we didn't know even where to focus for 2026. That is certainly something we're going to work on. I'm going to help you set goals that you can keep. And then Tam in the chat said she has a plan for the first half of 26, but nothing after that. I think that's probably a pretty healthy place to be, because that is a smart goal. It's realistic and it's time dependent. So brava. Okay, I'm going to close this poll and I'm going to move us on in the agenda to our next section. All right, so let's connect what we did in the year in review 2025 planning call, or 2025 review call, and where we're going in the new year. You might remember, if you were on that call, we had a bridge statement, and it was based on this keep, drop, add paradigm that I use to give feedback when I'm leading yoga teacher trainings, and that I use in reflection on my own teaching and business. So that's also something you may know as roses, thorns, and buds. So what were the highlights, the roses? What were the lowlights, the snags, the thorns? And what are the buds? What are the things that you want to grow as you move on into the next year of your teaching career? So we had some prompts to do that in the 2025 notebook. And if you have that, I would love to know what you came up with, your bridge statement from that workbook. You could copy it right out of your workbook and paste it into the chat for everyone to see. If you'd like to read it out loud, you are invited now to come off of mute and read me your bridge statement. But either way, I would love for you to have it here front and center of your mind. What were the highlights? What are you keeping from 2025 as you move into planning your 2026 yoga teaching career? What are you letting go of? What are you releasing? And what are you interested in learning more about? What are you curious about? Which island might you be interested at this point in swimming toward? So that is both something that you'll see toward the end of your 2025 workbook, and then also toward the beginning of this 2026 one, which, if you didn't have the 25 one, has a link embedded in it. So once again, I'll just say you can grab that from the chat, or if you're watching this later, you can grab it from the video description underneath. So if anybody wants to share anything, the floor is yours. You can just interrupt me. Otherwise, I'm going to take a real quick look at my notes. All right, Janelle shared her bridge statement. Fantastic. In 26, building on her strength in connecting with her students. That is the number one strength that we have as yoga teachers when we're teaching students in person, is giving the sense of connection, letting go of sequencing stress. Yes, girl. And exploring building a monthly planning routine. Fantastic. I've got you on my teleprompter monitor, which is why I'm squinting, because it's not the brightest. So these are fantastic. Janelle is a student in my Teaching Yoga to Athletes course, so she's receiving some extra help from me on this. Let's see. Promise Smile says, keeping the current class schedule excellent. It's great to know when things are working and keep them going. Dropping thoughts that you need to do more. Yes, exactly. It's so easy to get in our heads as yoga teachers and feel like we need to do something fresh every week or be everything to everyone. That's why my tagline is that I am here to help you become almost, in parentheses, almost everyone's favorite yoga teacher, because I think the worst thing we can do is try to be totally everyone's favorite yoga teacher, to run ourselves ragged with people pleasing, to give our students what they want instead of what they need. And that when we release the need to be everything to everyone, to please everybody, we're then better able to serve the folks who are actually in front of us. Like, we can see them on a different level there in ways that I think are really useful. Let's see. Brigitte is building on her strength in keeping the start and end of class the same. I love this. This is a container of bookends that is deeply soothing to our students' nervous systems. It's like, I know I use this analogy a lot, but if you grew up in a church environment, we have the same opening and closing to a church service. And I remember from my youth that when they start to sing the doxology, we're almost there and it's about time to come out. And that's why, like, the doxology and the benediction were always my favorite part of a Sunday morning, because I knew I was out of there and it would be time for lunch. So this kind of bookend, keeping the same opening, keeping the same ending, is really great for your students. Exploring more about how the body works. I love that. Tam is building on her strength in repeating classes week to week with some variations throughout the month. Tam, crushing it. Fantastic. That's exactly something that we're going to be covering today when we think about planning rhythms. Coming off her island in her slow flow class, getting off of her mat, I think is what you mean there. Pursuing your swimmer's recovery workshop. Fantastic. Something that Tam and I worked on together in Teaching Yoga to Athletes. Looking into creating an online course. Fantastic. And then some of the other homework that we did together in Teaching Yoga to Athletes. Awesome. Thanks, y'all, so much for sharing. It's really useful to us because we can be so siloed as yoga teachers. It's really useful to see what are our peers working on, what might some goals be if you're feeling like you're just kind of floating free and not sure which island you want to swim toward, where you might like to go as we move on into our planning workshop. Okay, leaning in to read. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to move us forward. And here you will see, this goes right along with something that you'll see in your workbook, but I built this a quick little flashcard. It's basically a slide deck walking through something that you will see there. So we're going to use this 3-part teaching intention framework. There are 3 S's because I really like how this goes together. We're going to look at structure, we're going to look at skills, and we're going to look at self-care, because paying attention to each of these 3 areas and setting a separate intention for each of them is going to keep you well balanced. You know how a stool needs to have 3 legs? You consider this the 3 legs that will make your stool level and balanced so that it can support you as you then serve and support your students over the course of your teaching year. So the first part of this 3-part framework would be your structural intention. How are you going to organize your teaching so that you can deliver consistency both to yourself, your nervous system? When you know what's coming in class, you're a lot more present to your students. You're a lot more free to see them, to adapt in the moment based on what they need. And it's about creating a sustainable planning rhythm that makes things easier, both for you deciding what to teach and for your students deciding what to do with their bodies moment to moment, remembering that it's always their agency in class. So here are things that you can ask yourself. Oops, I gotta flip that card. Flip, boom. What planning rhythm actually fits your life? Like, do you have abundant free time to be planning, or do you really just have 15 minutes a week to plan your class? I 100% think you can get by in that 15 minutes a week. You're just going to make slightly different choices about the balance of consistency and variety you offer across your lesson plans week to week. What structure made your teaching easier in 2025? And I know from the chat here even that many of us have committed or recommitted to less variety from week to week and more consistency from week to week, because we understand that less is often more here for our students. And then think what framework helps you feel like you are prepared without over planning, because we're always looking for the middle path, that fine line that we're walking in between being the total type A over planning yoga teacher, too much stira, too much stability, too much structure to the classroom, or being the total type B yoga teacher who just shows up on vibes and wings it and just sees what the room needs, but that doesn't give enough structure. That's too much sukha, too much freedom. So we're always looking for that middle path between stira and sukha, between structure and freedom, between a stable environment for our students and having a little bit of liveliness and rasa and juice in our classroom, where the students feel like there's growth and change without so much change that it becomes overwhelming. And you might find, I know I find even still after more than 20 years in my own teaching, kind of swing between these two poles from week to week. Some weeks I overplan, and then I realize, oh, I can't. For example, sometimes I plan a lecture like this and then I throw it up here on my teleprompter. I'm like, wow, I can't even read the words that I wrote out. So now I am in winging mode and just kind of going on the vibes. That's where having planned is so useful. One of my favorite quotes came from then General Eisenhower, who was later our American President Eisenhower. He said, when going into battle, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So when we think here in the next little bit about your structural intention, that's what you'll be thinking about. What is the amount of planning that lets me show up feeling confident, feeling calm, feeling grounded? Because we co-regulate with our students. When we walk into the classroom in that good state, we are then projecting that state for our students as models of it. What lets me come in with that feeling so that I then can reduce my mental load, my cognitive load, and see my students and see what they need, and then make the tweaks that they need moment to moment. So that's your structural intention. Then we'll think about skill intention. What is one specific teaching skill that you would like to develop over the 2026 year? It could be something really specific about like cueing or hands-on assists. It could be a style of yoga that you want to learn about. It'll be your curious about area from the last call. And I suggest you pick just one, unless you know that you've got a whole lot of time. You're stepping into your 300-hour yoga teacher training era and you're going to be spending more time. But if you're working a full-time job and yoga teaching is your active service or your side gig, one is going to be absolutely plenty. Here are some examples of that. Like, I'll practice teaching without notes once a month. I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing notes into the classroom, by the way, but if this is something that you know you over rely on, you're looking at your notes or your notebook instead of at your students, that would be a great example here. Or I'll learn 5 variations for each of the poses so that I can adapt in the room as it happens. Or I'll work on hands-on assists. I'll strengthen my cueing. All great examples there. So some questions that you can ask yourself as you're thinking about skill. What skill could I develop that would make me feel more confident in the classroom? What did my students struggle with that I want to address better? Like, where were the common glances of confusion? Or was there a common thread in the questions that my students asked me after class each week? And which area among these skills feels like a growth edge, not a shame spiral? By which I mean, thinking of this context of the comfort zone, we want to operate from within our comfort zone as teachers in front of the classroom. That's how we come for our class as models of feeling grounded and centered, as models of the power of the practice of yoga, right? We need to be working within our comfort zone. But as you know, growth begins at the edge of your comfort zone. That's how the quote goes. So we do have to come close to the edge in pushing ourselves to get better. That's how we expand. A little bit of mime for you here. That's how we expand the comfort zone and make it bigger from the inside out. So we don't want to decide to become a completely new teacher and make this so hard that we shut down or we start to feel like we're already a failure. Instead, we want to just kind of nudge from inside the bubble of our comfort zone and explore the comfort edges, the growth edges, where we can still be operating without fear of failure. One definition of the comfort zone is where you can operate without fear of failure, without getting overactivated and showing up scattered or nervous in front of our students. And to help with this, the third part of this intention structure that we're working on is the self-care intention. It's the boundary that makes your teaching sustainable. It's what keeps you from burning out as a yoga teacher. And it is a critical third leg to this stool. Do not skimp on this. If anything, I think this might be the most important of all of those. Oh, wait, I'm going to go back one because I think I have a couple examples here on the back side of the card. I won't plan classes the night before. I'll always plan them 48 hours ahead, or I will repeat my lesson plans completely guilt-free, knowing that that's good for my students. And as a consequence, I then have drastically reduced my lesson planning time. Or I will give myself a self-care day, a mental health day, and hire a regular sub to come in once per quarter or so that I can have an extra long weekend or whatever your timeline is there. I'll protect my own practice time separate from teaching. This is the sine qua non, to drop some Latin on you, without which nothing. If you are not paying attention to your own practice, you cannot show up as a good example for your students. 5 minutes is great. If 5 minutes is all you have every day, I suggest you take that away from your obsessing over lesson planning time, obsessing over scrolling Instagram to come up with fresh ideas time, and put it into you rolling around on the mat time, or you sitting and doing a little bit of pranayama or meditation time. 5 minutes a day is a great baseline. I think that should be doable. Or maybe you are the kind of people-pleasing teacher that studio owners love, and you are a sub-hero. And maybe you're starting to realize that runs you a little ragged, or you feel resentful when you show up to sub those classes. Then that would be your cue to build in something like this to your self-care commitment for yourself. So some questions to ask yourself on the subject of self-care. I'm gonna click us on through. Boop, 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 boop. I'm playing myself. All right, third time's a charm, y'all. All right, flip. What boundary would let you continue this for the long haul? What is going to sustain your longevity as a yoga teacher? Because you're not helping anybody, you're not serving anybody if you burn out. Were there choices that you made where you gave yourself some good examples of ways to protect your energy in 2025? And what might you need to leave behind in last year in order to make your teaching sustainable over time? So that is our 3-part teaching intention. I'm going to put that away and ask you for a quick thought about which one feels most important for you to focus on first. It's a quick poll for you. Self-care, I believe, is the most important, so I am tapping self-care myself. You can put in any of these. Maybe this is a skills building year for you and you're going to go there, or maybe you're like, oh, I think it's time to develop a framework where I am planning my classes in X amount of time, where this is the thing I'm going to try on at least for the first quarter of 2026, if not throughout. So this is your moment to choose one of these islands to swim toward, and then we will spend a little bit of time working in your workbook on this. So I'm leaning forward to see. I'm going to pull this timer down. I'm putting it up, but I'm going to shorten it for us to, let's say, 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes to keep me on track. There we go. And I am going to put myself on mute and go quiet and give y'all some time to work in your workbooks on this. If folks are following along later on the video, I will just cut this out. They'll have a chance to hit pause and take all the time that they want. I'm right here. If you need me, I'll just be muted. I had to let it run down so we could hear the timer chime. There we go. Let me get that out of the way. Hopefully that was enough to get you rolling on this 3-part intention setup. So you've got a structural intention, you've got a skills intention, and you've got a self-care intention. We're going to move on now to our next segment, in which we will think about the planning rhythm that's going to suit you. Now, I've got 3 examples here for you, but please know that there are many other ways that you could structure your class planning, your lesson planning over time. If one of these three models doesn't work for you, that's fine. You can absolutely do it your way. So this is moving you, I think, into section 2 of your workbook. But again, I have a few little flashcards for us to walk us through. So here, as I say, are 3 models that you could be using for your lesson planning. This is the one that I use. Option 1. Plan by the month with little variations week to week. This is good if you teach a consistent weekly class. It might be 60 to 90 minutes of lesson planning over the course of a month with a little bit of adjustment time over the course of a week. But with practice, it's going to become far less. Once you've gone through 6 months or a year of this style of lesson planning, then you can begin to repeat it. And then you're in this positive spiral. You're really cooking with gas. You're coming back to a sequence that you may have done half a year ago or so, and you're finding new ways to make it fun, interesting, but also consistent for your students. So I'm going to flip this card for us and say that the system would be to create one good sequence, like one full class recipe at the start of the month. And in the first week, you would teach it the way that you wrote it. You would also still be kind of learning it, not necessarily in your body, as I put here, but more like as a teacher in your body in front of the classroom. You will know it as a student, but you're still like, it's the first time that you served this dish on week 1 of the month. Then in the second week, you would do some kind of variation. Maybe you would add a pose or substitute a pose in the middle section, the standing pose chunk of class. Maybe in the third week, you change out the beginning or the ending. Depending on what you're teaching, you might be able to swap them wholesale. Very often, the poses that we use as finishing poses could be modified with some repetition and mobilization. Inhale, do this, exhale, do that. Pulsing style movements and become warm-ups and vice versa. Often the basic shapes that we're pulsing into in a warm-up work just fine as finishing poses toward the end of class. And then maybe in the last week of the month, you're adjusting based on what you witnessed over the previous 3 weeks. Or maybe you're just going back to what you did in week 1. I alluded earlier to my experience coaching endurance sports, and this is something that I would do when I was writing my training plans for the athletes I coached. It would go in a 4-week cycle, or for masters athletes, those of us over 40, or really grandmasters, those of us over 50, it would go in a 3-week cycle. So week 1, we set the base. Week 2, we go a little bit harder. Week 3, we go up harder still. And then week 4, we're going back to week 1. So that's a very familiar rhythm to those of us who have done that kind of athletic training. And it's just very soothing. It's like a wave coming in and then pulling back out, but it's an incoming tide. So that's one model that you may choose to work on. Another option is to go more modular and more recipe based, and it's to spend some time. Now, there's a hidden time investment here. Like, I suggest you come up with your own complete recipe box about all the things that you know you teach, but think of them as chunks. I give them names. If you've read my book, The Art of Yoga Sequencing, you've seen what my chunks are and what their names are. Or if you're in the Prep Station membership with me, or in Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing, my bigger mentorship membership, you've got this idea of what my recipes are. And once you've got those, then you're operating in this flip book example where you've got a dress up doll. She's got a headwear of some kind, a top of some kind, a skirt or pants of some kind, and shoes of some kind. And you're just swapping them out from week to week. This works if you teach a lot of different classes over the course of the month, where one class format would not directly translate into another, but you could probably repurpose pieces of your outfit from class to class. So the warm-up that you're teaching in your flow class might be the yin sequence that you teach. You just slow it way down, and it becomes the sequence in the yin class that you teach. Or the finishing poses that you're teaching again in that flow class could become the basis for your restorative yoga classes that you teach. So if you're teaching a variety of classes over the course of the week, modular might be the way that you choose to go. That would be building these recipe chunks. Make a list of all your warm-up sequences, make a list of all your standing sequences, make a list of all your mat sequences, and those might subdivide into core and hips focus, and then a list of all your finishing sequences. And each month, maybe you want to layer in a few new ones, and you can mix and match them based on what the class needs. If you're going with this modular, it's useful to write down what works in a notebook or a Google Doc or your notes app on your phone. I use Notion, which is a very powerful database to do this. And if you are into Notion, hit me up, send me a message in Comfort Zone Yoga or email me, and I will be happy to show you what my database looks like. The third option here is less variety, more consistency. It is coming up with one gorgeous outfit. Like, this is your total capsule wardrobe, where this is your class, and you only vary it marginally week to week. If you teach mixed level classes, drop-in classes where you never know who's coming, it may be useful to skew your own lesson planning farther toward consistency, so that then you know exactly what the recipe is and you can season it for whoever happens to walk into your 35-person gym class on a Sunday morning. This is maybe just a one-time investment to create that greatest hits recipe of your own. And then every class, you're kind of adjusting on the fly, because you've got this very basic replicable structure that you're teaching week in and week out. If you were trained in a set sequence, this should feel extremely familiar to you. So you've got that one core sequence that you can teach in your sleep. Every class, you're just changing something based on who you have. You've got in your head, or literally in your notes, a database, bank of variations for different needs. And you're able then to focus the practice on teaching the core sequence really well for the students who are there. So we are going to take another work-focused break here. I'm going to set us a 5-minute timer, and I'm also going to ask, I'm very interested in this, I'm going to open this poll and leave it open, which one of these fits your actual life right now? And you can answer that anytime over these next 5 minutes. So this is working into section 2 of your workbook. Think which of these is going to be your plan for at least the first quarter, if not the entirety of 2026. Once again, I'll go on mute. I've got my eyes on the chat if you need me. And when the bell rings in 4.5 minutes, we'll come back. All right, closing the poll, closing the timer. And I'm moving us on to our part 3. So here's where we need to put these intentions into action and develop a little bit of accountability. So we want to have accountability without burnout. So we don't want to check in every day. How am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? But we also don't want to spend an hour here at the beginning of the year planning this gorgeous intention across these 3 pillars of your teaching year, and then forget that you spent this hour trying to figure out how you were going to develop your skills to help your students best. So we want to find the happy in between. So that's what we're going to do here. Come up with some kind of accountability plan for you that makes sense for you and your students. And I'm going to pull up this 3-month check-in system flashcard. I think 3 months is good. That's long enough that you can really get into the rhythm of this planning method that you have just chosen. But it's also short enough that if it isn't working after 3 months, you can change it. And then you haven't just ruined your entire teaching year for yourself by holding on to something too long. And it just matches the natural quarterly planning rhythms that we use in business. Here's what to track. Really simple. 3 questions per month. Am I keeping my structural intention? Am I keeping my skill intention, or am I developing it? And am I doing a good job by honoring my self-care intention? These are all in your workbook, so you can schedule yourself. You might even go and do it right now on your calendar in a couple months, maybe at the end of March, the quarterly system. At the end of March, give yourself a little reminder, ask myself these 3 questions. You can copy them right from your workbook and paste them. So that would be the end of Q1. Then you could do it again as we hit the summer, again as we head into fall, and then you'll be right on track to ask yourself these questions again at the end of December. That is how you keep yourself accountable, and do go in and calendar it. I really think that's going to make a huge difference for you to have it on your calendar, and it will pop up. So that could be a literal calendar item, or if you use a task planner, it could go in there as well. Let me take a quick look at my agenda. Yes, I would love to know when you're going to check in on your intentions by. If you believe me, you'll say March. You could put that into the chat. And then if you want an accountability buddy, if you want somebody to talk to about your teaching, maybe somebody from this call, you can ask in the chat right now, or you can come to the Ask a Question space at Comfort Zone Yoga and ask someone to be your accountability buddy. I think that's fantastic. Vianney's asking a fantastic question in the chat. So while y'all say when you're going to check in, I'm going to read it and answer it. I'm wondering if reading the room is a skill. Yes, it is. I'm having trouble visualizing it like developing a more physical skill like hands-on assists. Yeah, it's true because it's less quantitative and more qualitative. So how can you show that you were present? That's not really something that you can measure in the same way as like I was able to give everybody who opted in a hands-on assist over the course of the sequence today. But absolutely reading the room is a skill and something that you could try, Vianney, if you have a regular or group of regulars is just grab them before class and say, I'm so grateful to have you in class every week. One of my projects for 2026 is finding ways that I can help y'all even better. So something that I'm trying to work on is really being in the moment with students and adapting and adjusting on the fly. Could you maybe give me feedback about this at the end of class today and next week and the week after? And tell me if you can notice anything a little bit different. And then there are also some constraints that you can put on yourself to hold yourself accountable for reading the room. So one example would be to create the conditions where you always got your eyes on your students. So to commit to never turning your back to the classroom unless you're demonstrating something that happens behind the back. Other than that, you should have your face towards your students the whole time. Never closing your eyes, even if you're thinking like, how would I think of this? Try to do that with your eyes open so that you can see your students. Another one would be to not use a mat at all, to instead just have a yoga blanket in case you needed a cushion for a knee if you were giving a quick demo of something. Another would be to not stand in the front of the room very much and instead to make a slow, purposeful movement through the room a feature of your teaching. So all of those would be ways that you could adjust the input of your ability to read the room, and then you could ask your students for feedback on your output. Hopefully that is useful. Okay, so you've calendared it, even if you haven't put in the chat here. Yes, you can share your updates somewhere on Comfort Zone, Janelle. That's a great idea. I should write myself a reminder to ask everybody at the end of March, hey, how are you doing on your 2026 commitments? So hopefully I'll see this in my transcript as I'm editing this video, and we'll add it as an option for us. Fantastic. Okay, we've got one last step. I'm jumping us ahead. We are almost there. The last thing you need to do is name your commitment out loud. I know it sounds cheesy, but y'all, we're yoga teachers. Like, we're into the affirmations, right? So you have got a square in your workbook that has almost like Mad Libs, fill in the blank. In 2026, I'm committing to your structural intention because it will make teaching easier and more sustainable. I'll develop my skill in your skill area through consistent, realistic practice. You can also modify that to make sense for what the skill is you chose. And I'll protect my teaching sustainability by honoring XYZ boundaries. This plan builds on what already worked in 2025. It honors how I actually teach. It's realistic, sustainable, and focused on what matters most, showing up for my students while taking care of myself. Remember, that's how we maintain longevity as yoga teachers over time. And here's your affirmation. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to start, and I'm ready. So if you're feeling the woo, you could literally read this out loud to yourself right now, or after we get off the call. This might be something that you want to print out and post on your mirror or tape into your teaching notebook or journal, something that you can come back to and see over and over and over again, because setting an intention is one thing and actually remembering and living by that intention is a whole nother. And that's where you really start to make those big leaps and bounds at your presence in the classroom, at your leveling up your skill as a yoga teacher. So please don't shirk on that exercise there. So that is your tour through the workbook. You may still have lots of work to do in there. You may have jotted down everything you need to get your year off to a good start. So we've got a structural intention, we've got a skills intention, and we've got that all-important self-care intention. As you know, I've got some resources to help you with all these. I put a description of them and links to them in your workbook, but I have Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing, which is my mentorship membership. If you're like, and I love to see this in the poll, that many of y'all were like, I'm all in on the monthly rhythm. And you're like, great, well, it's one thing to feel like I'm all in on the monthly rhythm, and it's a whole other thing to actually figure out what I'm going to teach month to month. I do that for you in Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing. I give you a lesson plan and 4 weeks of iterations every month. And there's also a backlog of them in there. So you can come in if the one I have offered for the special of the month doesn't suit you, you can choose a different one. So that is a full featured mentorship program. It's got lots of discussions like this and teachers lounge calls. It's got my direct oversight. If you want to run things by me, I am here to give you feedback and review at any point. And so are your colleagues in there, which is really sweet. That is full. That is a big deal. That is a 6-month deal. If you're not ready for that level of commitment, there's a bite-sized version of it called the Yoga Class Prep Station. It's $39 a month instead of $300 a month. And it is little bite-sized, like you get access to all the sequences, but they're just kind of split up into bite-sized portions. You can read about that at the link in the workbook or in the description if you're watching this later. If your skills intentions are things like Vianney was asking about, like presence, that's the kind of thing I cover inside Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing. If your skills are more like, I want to be able to lead a trauma-informed classroom or teach balance better, or I'm interested in learning about yin or restorative. I've got courses on all of those, and put together with Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing, those are all my 300-hour yoga teacher training. So if you got your 200 and you want eventually to be RYT 500, or you just love learning, I've got lots of options for you there. And then remember that we have an Ask a Question space in Comfort Zone. That's where I'm going to schedule that reminder to check in with y'all at the end of March and see how you're doing with these 2026 intentions. And then I have a podcast that looks a lot like this. It's called Yoga Teacher Confidential, and you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or watch it on YouTube as a video podcast. So that is what I have for you today, which means we've got 10 extra minutes. If you want to stick around and ask me anything, feel free to ask a question in the queue in the chat, or just pop off mic and ask it out loud. You are also welcome to simply type a question in the chat and I will come in and answer it. I see some typing. Thanks, Denise. If you have no question and you've got to run, you can just slip out at any point. Don't feel like you have to stick around. Thank you to Tam too.
I have a question.
Let's hear it.
So I love everything you talk about with sequencing and how to make your teaching life easier and more intentional. And so I've really been giving that a lot of thought over the past few months. And I probably do what is the sequence that you know the best, and add in variations, except I might have like 7 or 8 sequences that I know the best. And I'm considering breaking it down by, let's say, a sequence where it's more hip focused or shoulder focused, and then typing up a variety of additions or variations that could fit within that, and creating a book for myself. And I'm curious if you know anyone who's done this, or if you have any ideas about how to organize this, anything along those lines.
Yeah, I love it, Betsy. That's a great question. That's very much what we do inside of Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing, is like work on your recipe book. And having looked at people's recipe books over the years, the best answer is you should do this however works for your brain, because you're the boss. And if like this is really just like, you know how your grandmother might have had a literal recipe box with the cards, and the cards were printed, they had a carrot on them or whatever, and she would get them and write out the recipe. Like if that's the way that works for your brain, that's the way you should do it. If a Google sheet with tabs works for your brain, then you can do it that way. It's really a question of what will enable you to reduce the amount of time you spend planning once you have created this resource, while keeping your teaching focused on your students. And the thing that you described is exactly right. Like, okay, so what if like there's some kind of base recipe, and the base recipe could follow my 6-4-2 format, or it could be yoga for hockey players, or it could be yoga for shoulders and hips, and yoga for the feet, like whatever paradigm you want to use as your lens for like, this is the way that I focus, this is the way I build a sequence, a recipe, a chunk around a body part, or the planes of movement, or the ways that people use their bodies in a particular sport. Whatever makes sense for your brain is absolutely right. And then you go, like you said, and write a variations bank. Like if somebody came in, this happens more often than you might think. If somebody came in a walking boot, which happens in my class, well, so how would I change this for someone in a walking boot? And often that's like, oh, I'd take the same sequence, but change its relationship to gravity. Or I would, swap this out wholesale for them, or I'd have them do it from their knees instead of from their feet. So whatever lens you use as your root for creating the recipe is less important than the fact that you then grow the recipe into all these different variations so that you can serve the greatest number of people who show up in front of you. Thanks for the thumbs up. I love it. So several of y'all here, Betsy included, have gone through teaching yoga to athletes, which is why I threw in that hockey player thing. It was not a heated rivalry reference or anything. But, I'm so glad to see so many of the teaching yoga to athletes crew in here today. Anybody else have a question? Let's see.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, so there's mastering the art of yoga sequencing, and what was the mentorship you mentioned that's kind of gets into sequencing too?
So because mastering the art of yoga sequencing membership is the big membership. That is the 6-month mentorship program. It's half of the 300. And so that's the big full one where we do a whole lot of back and forth. Then there's the bite-sized version that's called the prep station. And that's where I give you like one little snack every week. Like, here's a teaching tip, here's a theme seed, here's, we have a monthly call. So like, here's what we'll be talking about on our monthly call. And then here is a sequence pulled out of the movement library that you get access to when you join that lower ticket membership, but that you already have in teaching yoga to athletes. So it's like, here's a little sequence that you could take and serve in your classes over the course of the week. So that's the little version. And then mastering the art of yoga sequencing is the big one.
Okay. Thanks. So the would teach you all about how to create the modules, the blocks, and also how to plan once a month, and then just
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And it's modeled for you all along. But the idea is that you're riding on the back of the bike with me at the beginning, and then we put you in your training wheels, and then we take the training wheels off, and you're set for life. You'll have all the sequences. You'll have that fully built out recipe box and all the sequences you would need through the years. It's a nice next step after teaching yoga to athletes, and then you would have a 300, whether you want one or not. I'd still give you a diploma. And so that if you chose to register with the Yoga Alliance at the 500-hour level, you then could, after going through both programs with me.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else want to ask anything? What I know is that you'll come up with a question as soon as we hang up, and that's absolutely fine. Come to ask a question, email me if it's something very specific. I try to be as available as possible as I am stepping into what I like to call my legacy era as a teacher and teacher trainer. I'm trying to give as much value to y'all as I can. So thank you for letting me talk with you for this past hour. I'm going to go spin this recording down, put it up in Comfort Zone Yoga and on YouTube. And next month, we are going to have you can't see on this camera view, but I'm going to back up. I may be here, I may be at my other place, but I'm going to back up and we're going to have some movement because I'm going to break down the greatest hits recipe for you. So if you're like, how could I take something and do it over the course of 4 weeks? I got you. That'll be our comfort zone conversation next month, and we'll do a little bit of movement along with it. So you can RSVP for that at comfortzoneyoga.com. And I am so grateful for your presence today, and I will look forward to seeing you all in February. Bye.